Hello, John Bloodworth here with Card Sketch Challenge number 7. This time around we're working mostly with panels, but I've got a couple of cool techniques that I'll show you. Now here's all the bits that I'll be using. Quite a lot for this card. And I'll start out by making the actual card itself. If you don't have any 6x4 card blanks, just chop yourself a piece of card that's 8x6 and then fold it in half, as I'm doing here. I use my big trimmer for this because my other one doesn't have an 8-inch extension. It just goes up to 6. Manual scoring board here for the scoring line, and then fold and press, making sure that the edges line up before firmly pressing that crease. Sorry I did that out of the way. That wasn't very clever. Now the larger piece of paper that I'm going to use as the pattern background, I'm actually going to chop down into 6-inch sections anyway, just for convenience really, although I could have carried on using the larger trimmer to cut down the layers as well. So here we are with this smaller trimmer, the guillotine, and I'm chopping these down according to the measurements on the sketch, which of course, as with all of these card sketch challenges, you can download from my blog. The address was shown at the start of this video. There is a link below the video on YouTube, or of course just head over to gentlemancrafter.com and you will find this along with a whole other stack of stuff that I've been doing over the last 9 years. How crazy is that? Okie dokie. Next up, I'm going to ink the edges using a rust coloured ink pad. And this again is just to really sort of separate these papers, because they have some colours in there that are similar to the background, from the background. You can ink this with whatever ink pads you've got available. Time to start sticking those down, and of course I'm using the Pinflair bookbinding glue, but you can use whatever you prefer. This is my preference because it's low moisture content, so it doesn't wrinkle your papers or your card. Quick drying, so you can work fast. And you need so little of it. It goes a long way. I think I've done about, what are we on now? I did 100 of these card sketch challenges last year. We're on number 7 here. I've done countless other projects with paper and cardstock. And throughout all of that, I think I'm just getting to the end of my second bottle. Okay, now for this I thought, how about a bit of heat embossing? So I've taken my clear embossing ink pad and I'm just smushing that into a piece of the cardstock that I used to make the card from. That way I'm keeping the colour scheme working throughout the embellishments as well. And then I'm going to chuck a random selection of embossing powders on top, but I say random, they are kind of colour coordinated with all of the colours that are on the papers and the card already. So, random but organised? Is there such a thing? Shaking off the excess and then out with the heat tool to set that. Remembering that it is hot, so using your fingers is probably not a good idea. And then just moving that gradually over the embossing powder until it melts, and then just keeping that heat moving. And you can see how that's affecting the embossing powder as I work the heat tool down the length of the card. dabbing on just a tiny little bit more ink. I say dabbing, obviously I smeared. And then chucking on some of that leftover from before. Reheating. And that will then melt those in there and give me a bit more of a random patterning throughout. Any embossing powders will work for this. Chunkier ones might give you a slightly better effect as they will spread as they melt. Now while that's cooling, I'm putting all of the dies that I want to use for this onto the cutting pad, and I've just skipped ahead a bit for you there and die cut them all out, and also die cut some from the plain cardstock as well. I'm then going to stick those all down, again using bookbinding glue. If you want to raise any of these up, then a 3D glue would work well, something like the Pin Flare Glue Gel. I use that one because it doesn't smell, but you can use silicone glue as well. It just takes a while to dry, and don't use too much, otherwise it will, as it contracts, as it dries it contracts, so it will warp your card. So on those occasions, less is definitely more. On with the numbers, which I've chosen to put on, and this was just really to give an example of where to put some kind of sentiment, but you could use the panel above this. You could switch those panels around so the cogs are somewhere else. It's entirely up to you. And then the final step is on with some of those cogs. You could add gems, you could add metallic flat back pearls. You could get all steampunky. Really, it's up to you. I didn't actually have a plan for where to put these. I'm mostly just going with what works. And then with this one that got cut off during the die cutting, because it wasn't fully over the die, I can still use that. And that gives the impression that these come up from below. And I chuck the other one. And there you go. That's number 7 done. I look forward to seeing what you make.